and welcome to Fine is a Four-Letter Word. My guest today is Michelle. So now I'm going to mess up the first name, but not the last name. All right. Michelle Charpentier.
Perfect. Hello.
Does it? Okay. See, that French in high school paid off for just this point. Just this experience. Welcome to the show, Michelle.
Thank you for having me. It's great to reconnect with you.
Yes, it is. We were just having a little pre-recording chat, and so I hit record, and we were both already still laughing. That's a good sign. It's going to be a good show. So,
Definitely.
yeah, let's start off with my question about what
Mm.
were the values and beliefs that you were raised with
Oh my
that
gosh.
contributed to making you who you are?
Yeah, I think the main thing that like pops into my head is just honestly treat everyone how you would want to be treated. It sounds so silly, but I really saw it. My dad was a school teacher and a musician, and he always was like, no matter if it's the janitor that's cleaning the floor of the school or if it's the principal that's organizing the school, we all are serving a purpose and a point. So why would I treat someone a certain way just because they're taking out trash and they're sitting behind a desk? And so that was always just kind of like my philosophy growing up as well. And I think it's really contributed to a lot of the success that I've had, because a lot of your success is relationship building. And so
Mm-hmm.
when you treat others like we're all equal, regardless of your experience or your age or your background or whatever, it makes a difference. And I think that's my biggest takeaway.
Yeah, I love that. I remember seeing not too long ago, because like everybody's talking about equality and diversity and all these
Mm,
things now. But a picture, a meme, or something on social media, and like at the end of the day, all the skeletons look the same.
yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Absolutely. It's like we all bleed the same. Like,
hmm,
well, you
right,
know what I mean? So it's, and you don't know people's backstory. Like you don't know their history or their skill set or like anything like that until you really get to know them. So it's like just
right.
because they maybe were working a different job than you or at a different company than you or have a different title than you, like you might be both moms and then
Hmm.
you're struggling with toddlers at night, or you
Yeah.
know what I mean? So it's like you don't really know a person until you get to know them, because their title isn't really who they are. It's just the job that they're doing in that moment.
Right, exactly, which is a good point, because a lot of people take on what their
Mm,
title is as their identity, and then if they are laid off, or they're running a business, and the business, I don't like to use the word that fails, but the business
yeah.
doesn't succeed the way they would have liked it
Sure.
to, and they have to shut it down. I went through this when I had my first business, and
Yeah.
like, now who am I? Because they don't have an
Yeah.
identity, it's only tied to their title.
Yeah, I was actually listening to, I don't remember if it was on his podcast or his stand up, but Trevor Noah. I'm a huge
Mhm.
fan of his. And
Yes.
he said something like, when you're in another country and they say like, what do you do? Like, Americans typically are say like, well, I'm the CEO of blah blah blah. And it's like, well, no, like what do you do? But whereas you
Right.
ask someone from another country, they're like, oh, I like to go for walks or I like to spend time with my family. And so it's true, like I think we do kind of define ourselves or introduce ourselves typically by like what we're doing, but for work. But it's like you're so much more than that. And you have so many
Yeah.
other hobbies. And that's how you find commonalities with people is, your interest in your hobbies, not necessarily what your job is in that moment.
Right, 100%. I've heard that too about,
Yeah.
it's just such an American thing to
Yeah.
say what your job title, and it's not even your job, it's your job title. It's
Yes.
like like it's setting your status.
Yeah. And that's something I don't know if it was just a me thing or what, but when I worked in corporate and we had to do those, we had like a vendor meeting or something. You had to go around the room and introduce
Mm.
yourself. Like I hated saying like, "Oh, I'm the manager," blah blah blah. I would just be like, "Oh, I'm on the marketing team or I'm on the retail team." It's just I don't know. It's like silly. For me personally, I hated like introducing myself as a particular title. Um,
Mhm.
I don't know. It always felt so awkward for me. I never liked it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and since you brought up having worked in a corporate job, let's go
Yeah,
there.
sure.
What yeah, so you were brought up with this idea that everybody is equal and treat everybody the same. And
Yeah.
then you got into corporate and found that's not really what happens there.
It's not. It's not. And actually, going back to actually, this is so funny. This just like brought up a memory for me where, excuse me, at one of the corporations that I worked with, one of my responsibilities at a time was facilitating all of our meetings for all of our retail stores. So working at corporate, overseeing retail stores. And so we would bring in all of our store managers for hands-on training or things like that, job-specific training or team building, things like that. And so I remember one of the times we needed the room set up in like such a way, or something was missing or something like that. And the person who was supposed to set it up said to me, well, go ask so-and-so, who was the kind of like cleaning lady of the office that would kind of set things up. Go ask so-and-so because she likes you. And I'm like, well, she likes me because I talk to her. Like we talk
Mhm.
about our kids and you know what I mean? So it's like,
Yeah.
that shouldn't be the case where you think that, only I can go and coordinate with this person because I actually have a relationship with her. You think that she's not going to do anything for her. Well, how about be nice to her?
Right.
You know what I
Right.
mean? Like, I don't get it. Like, and that's another example of cross-functionally all of us coming together and needing to pull off this event. I might have been speaking or leading something at the event, but I'm still going to pitch in and help set up the table and do those things. Why not? Because it
Mhm.
sets the tone and the experience. So I'm going to appreciate that this particular person is helping us do something outside of her job description by setting up this room for us. But I'm going to help her, and it's a collaboration. And that's the
Yeah.
way that I've always seen everything. And that's just one example, but that comes across in many different roles when you're working cross functionally. Relationships matter so much.
They really do. They really do. When you were working in managerial roles, did you work with people who were aspiring leaders
Oh,
to
yeah.
like teach them these
Oh, yeah.
different like skills and tools and stuff? Because
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. And
as act as
actually,
a mentor.
yeah. And that's actually where I really found my passion in coaching and mentorship. Um, so at one of the organizations that I worked at, um, so I worked at David Yurman for about 9 years. And when I started there. I was the only in-house customer care rep, basically, because the e-commerce business was outsourced by Neiman Marcus. And so when they decided to bring their .com in-house, I played a big role in that, and it was a really exciting role because we were building a whole team of me, basically,
Yeah.
so like customer service reps and buy online, pick up in store. So working really cross functionally with all of our retail stores and building out our logistics teams and policies and procedures and scripts and software and like all these exciting things. And a huge part of that, outside of just the operational part of it, is building a team and building them to be confident in being able to like run 24/7, because that's almost kind of the hours right, when you're in
Mhm.
customer service. And you need to be able to take time off and step away from the business. And so you know working one-on-one with my team and also holding workshops with my team, and also finding like what they like and what they don't like, because you don't want to assume that just because you're in a customer service role, for example, that they want to be a customer service supervisor and then a customer service manager. Like, you don't want to assume that is their trajectory. So finding out what they like and what they don't like, and you get that through having one-on-one sessions with your team. That's your option for ask me anything. That's your option for let's review how we can do this better, or this is a new thing we're putting in place. I want to make sure that you understand it. Like, let's try it out. Do you have questions? And also, like, what are your goals and aspirations professionally? Because that's an opportunity where I could provide my team with a stretch assignment, or I could tell, again, leaning into my cross-functional relationships, is there someone in merchandising that like needs an extra hand? Like, can I send someone from my team to go help them? And they can see, like, is this something I want to pursue? And then how can they build their skills to have that be their next step? Because I want to keep good talent in my organization. I don't want to
Yeah.
lose them if you spend so much time
Right.
investing in them. Um,
Yeah.
So that's a huge part of mentorship. And later in my time there, I held various positions, but later in my time there, I was in learning and development and under the HR umbrella. And that's when I realized that not all managers kind of operated like me, like not like I'm trying to
I
like
was just
put
gonna
it on
ask you
board,
that.
but I
Yeah.
was like, you don't have one-on-ones with your team?
Right. Like the
What?
things that seem so common sense to you.
Yeah.
Right.
I was like, well, how, I don't know. I'm still kind of at a loss for words. I'm like, how do they understand what's going on? Like, how do they know where they stand? And then it kind of like explains, oh, that's why people feel like there's a lack of communication, with the department or whatever their like complaint may be, is because they are really left in the dark. You have managers
Mm-hmm.
that are going to cross-functional meetings and then they don't report back to the team. That's like, I'm not trying to single out a particular organization by any means. I've worked with several organizations, and this is all something that kind of is like a commonality.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, the one-on-one coaching is so important, and yeah, I've always loved that. And so when I started my own business, I didn't have a team.
Uh-huh.
That's when I started mentoring to kind of fill that void, because I just loved working with aspiring young professionals and also professionals, that were looking to enhance their career or pivot in their career. Um, that was a very long-winded question or answer.
Yeah, no, there were so many good key takeaways in there, though. And whether you're working with a team in a business setting or your team is your family kind of thing,
Yeah.
like having those conversations, the keeping the channels of communication open, setting some expectations of like, well, if you go to a cross departmental meeting, that
Hmm.
you are to come back and report
Yeah.
to the rest of the team, like setting that
Yeah.
expectations like
Yeah.
that makes makes those relationships like in the
Yeah. It builds
communication
trust.
and then the relationships, yeah, builds
Yeah.
trust.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, it always comes back to communication, right? Because
Totally.
people have these not what's the expectations, not the right word, these beliefs that everybody knows what they're thinking, and
Yeah.
that everybody thinks the same way or acts the same way. Like you said, you found out that other managers don't run their teams that way,
Yeah.
and it's like, wait, what? Doesn't everybody do this way? And that's part of the interesting thing about being human, is that everybody doesn't do things the same way you do.
Yeah. And that's okay. And I'm not saying like
Yeah,
there's only one way to do things, but communication is key. And I mean, there's no denying that.
right. And as a leader, being somebody who people want to follow,
Yeah.
or not even necessarily follow, like, you hear people talking about servant leadership or leading from behind kind of things.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
so it's not even necessarily follow, but it is like to support and be on the team with,
Hmm.
and be wanting to contribute and be engaged. We know a
Yeah.
lot of companies are talking about employee engagement these
Right.
days, and how important it is, but how elusive it is. But when you have leaders who are doing the things that you were doing, it makes it a whole different ballgame.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, it's all about trust. Like I want them to trust me and I need to trust them. Like if
Right,
I'm
right.
if I want to take time off and go on vacation or whatever, I need to trust my team that they're going to show up and they're going to represent our team, because it's also a representation of me and our brand. So
Yeah.
we need to have the trust, and that's, communication is a huge part of that. And of course there are things that happen as you get higher up into an organization where it's like, okay, this is, information that we don't want to just, tell everyone just yet.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, there are things like that, but it's like for basic things, just keeping your team in the loop is super important, or as much as you can tell them is really important. Um, and it's great because over time, as I've moved to different companies and different roles, I've stayed in touch with my team, and I still
Yeah.
celebrate all of my teams, and I celebrate their successes. And I've been able to hire other team members in the future for whether it be freelance or other jobs. Um, and it's really nice, when you build those
Yeah.
relationships, to find other ways that you can continue to work with each other and even support each other.
Yeah, absolutely. And so talking about being such an amazing team leader, there was a downside to it for you. And this is where we get to the part where fine was not fine, right?
Yeah.
What were some of the challenges that you faced in being such a dedicated leader?
Yeah, yeah. So I guess going back to when I was working in that role that I was talking about at Yearman, but I should say, like, tremendous company, and I love them dearly. So this is like not a negative to them
Mhm.
at all. This is just what I had done to myself.
Right, right, right.
But
This was part of your personal growth.
yeah,
Mhm.
so I was, living in Brooklyn, working in New York City. And then this opportunity came where I was promoted into this new role, which you can't say no. And the facility that I'd be working out of was in New Jersey. So I was commuting 2 hours to work each way. So it was
Oh
at
my
least a
gosh.
4-hour commute. It was
That's
awful.
crazy.
It was awful. And then plus coupled with, working basically a retail schedule, because,
Mhm.
there would be some later evenings, there's some super early mornings, there'd be some weekends. But I always wanted to be a part of the rotation, because if I'm asking my team member to be there on a Saturday, like, I have to show up some Saturdays too, you know?
Mhm.
So, and also, if I was taking time off, I would still always be checking emails. If we have, a team in Paris, obviously we're on a different time zone. So I'm responding to emails. It was like, I was like a doctor almost, where I was like always on
Mhm.
call. And it's like,
Yeah.
it's jewelry. Like, what are, like, you know what I mean?
Right, right, right.
Um,
No one's dying here.
like, you know what I mean? It was just, but I felt this, like, such a strong commitment to my team, to the company, to just like showing up and performing and making sure that if someone answered me, I answer them right away, or regardless if it was a text or an email or whatever, at whatever time of night. And
Mhm.
it led to such burnout. It led to such burnout. And I knew that I wanted to start a family, and those hours were not sustainable. So I knew, like, something had to change. So ultimately I was afforded an opportunity to stay with the company and move back into the city, which definitely helped. But over more years of working corporate retail at other organizations, that burnout just stayed the same. It was
Mhm.
hard. I wasn't having that work-life balance, and I burn out.
Mhm.
Just plain and
Mhm.
simple.
Yeah. And you had said in our other conversation, pre-show conversation, that
Yeah.
you didn't feel like you could ask for help because it was a sign of weakness or failure.
Yeah. So when I actually had a child, so this is fast forward to 2020 during the pandemic. That's when I launched my business, and I had my daughter in August of 2020. She just turned 4, um, and I always prided myself on being independent and, like, achieving things on my own and working hard and doing all these things. And I did feel like it was a sign of weakness, a sign of failure. Maybe it's a little bit of ego, maybe it's a little bit of pride, that
Mhm.
I felt like I couldn't ask for help. But it really did feel like such a failure to me to ask for, like, the simplest things. But again, like, kind of rock bottom, like, you just totally maxed out. It's like you have to ask for help, because if you don't ask for help, is a disservice to not only yourself but everyone around you. And
Mhm.
what I realized too is, you know, if someone asked me for help, I would never think any less of them.
Right.
Like, if a loved one or a friend or even a previous colleague of mine needed help with something, I'd say, of course. Well, it depends on what it is. If they're asking me for something crazy, I'd
Yeah,
be like,
right, right,
"Mm."
right. But
But if
within
it's something
reason.
reasonable, then I
Yes.
would say, of course. I would never think any less of them. I would be so happy and honored that they asked me to help them with something. So
Yeah.
why would I think the opposite when it comes to me asking someone else for help? You know?
Right, right.
Um,
And this is a key takeaway point, because we often think that what we don't even think of as a weakness when other people ask us, it
yeah,
somehow it turns around when it's our turn.
yeah,
It's like, oh, I can't do that because that would
yes,
be, showing vulnerability is
yeah,
there have been surveys that have been done, and that people think that people who show their vulnerability are even more strong or more admirable, admirable. Boy, words today. Challenge. Um,
That's what a
more
French one.
admirable. Yeah. But when it comes to be their turn to be vulnerable, they don't want to because they see it as a weakness.
Yeah.
It's so bizarre.
Yeah. And that's something that totally was happening like subconsciously in my mind,
Mm-hmm.
because I wasn't like consciously thinking like, oh, they're going to think blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Just, I couldn't bring myself to do it. I just like literally couldn't even do it. So like, even when it got harder for me, I would kind of just like hope like, well, maybe they'll offer their assistance, or maybe,
Mm.
you know what I mean? And then I can be
Maybe
like,
they'll read
all
my
right,
mind. Maybe they'll just
right.
know. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, just like finding a rhythm, and then knowing that like you're gonna like you always are gonna pay it back. And it's a give and take with a relationship. And if someone is really unable to like help you, or like never wants to, then that is kind of a flag, because it's like,
Yeah.
well, do I really want someone like that in my life when I'm always giving to them? If they're really
Yes.
unwilling to do the simplest thing, like drop a letter in the mailbox for me because they're going to pass
Mm-hmm.
it anyway, something
Mm-hmm.
simple. If
Mm-hmm.
that's really a burden to them, then why am I serving them? Like, why am I giving so much of my time?
Right. Why do I have
Obviously
that
I don't have
energy? Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Why do I have that energy in my life?
right.
Yeah.
I don't want that.
Exactly. What do you do now? Well, first of all, let me ask you a different question first. Where did you learn that? Like, was that a value or belief that was passed down to you of not being able to ask for help?
Oh man. I mean, I don't think it was something that I was ever taught, but I think it was maybe something that I observed, because
Yeah,
my dad is such
exactly.
a hard worker.
Yeah.
And, he always worked, like I said, he's a musician. So he's always gigging. And then, he was always doing a bunch of stuff to make sure that we
Mm-hmm.
had whatever we needed. And then, come home and clean, or like play with
Mm-hmm.
us or whatever. And, my
Yeah.
mom too, like always kind of doing something. Of course they'd ask us to clean our room, and would ask us for things like that, but they always just kind of figured it out. And so I think like maybe just through observation was
Yeah.
was that. But um life is so much different now, and circumstances are so much different now,
Yeah.
where I'm not as afraid, I guess, to ask for help when in reason. Like,
Yeah. Well, and I think in as a society, and it's very slowly, glacial pace, but changing the perspective on what it means to ask for help.
mm, mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think too, like just speaking from a female standpoint too, like traditionally women were always like the homemakers. And
Mm-hmm.
so now when we're balancing home, but also balancing our professional or personal aspirations,
Mm-hmm.
there's so much more to juggle. And there's also just so much more access and opportunity that there was even 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Like I remember when I was picking a something to study in school, my mom was like, wow, like I want to go back. Like we didn't have these options when I was your age.
Mm-hmm.
And now even more so. I mean, my son is a senior, getting into his senior year of high school. And it's like, oh my God, I can't believe this esports is a career. Like, you know what I mean? There's just so
Right.
many options
Yeah.
that we didn't have. So also just keeping up with all of that can feel very overwhelming. So yeah, I just it is a lot. It can be a lot.
What are you doing now to help yourself to put boundaries in place to practice self-care? Like what are the tools and techniques that you're using now to make
Yeah.
sure that you don't fall back into those same patterns of burnout?
Yeah. Honestly, I am not afraid of saying no. And I don't know if this is something that came with age or came with motherhood or what it is, but I'm like, if it's not for me, no. Like if it's something that can help you and help someone, like I won't negate that completely, but it's like, no, no. Like I don't want to go out and do something. I'd rather come home and work on this or spend time with my kids. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? It's like, I know where my values stand and I know what's going to serve me. So I'm very easy to like swat things away. Um, But another thing, a tool that I use though, which is so simple and may sound so silly, but my Google Calendar, honestly, I live and die by it. I am a
Mm.
firm believer in schedule blocking. So I have in everything, whether it's something for school, someone's birthday, whatever. And then I sprinkle in the things that I'm doing. If I'm doing a podcast recording here, if I'm doing content creation here, and then everything kind of fits into a box. And then I can say, I need to be done by 4 because, you know, my kids are
Yep.
going to be home and that's family time. And that's that. And if someone tries to call me or whatever during that time, they have to wait. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I have time for answering emails, even, which might sound so silly, but before when I was in corporate and I was every single, you know, little
Yeah.
ding and I'd be on it. And it's like, no, because if you're dinging me while I'm with my kids, they're seeing me on my phone and they're upset because they want to spend time with me because they waited, you know, for time for me to be not working. And I don't get these moments back. So this is where my
Right.
attention has to be.
Yes. And you're subconsciously telling them that they're not important if that's what you're
100%,
paying attention to when you're supposed to be, or, you know, when you've blocked out time to be with them and then you're
100%.
doing something else. It's
Yeah,
basically telling them you're not as important as
100%.
whatever is on the other end of my phone.
Yeah. And you can't multitask either. Like if you're
No,
with
that's such a myth.
someone and you're trying to do something work related, it's with or without kids, you know what I mean? If you're
Yeah.
just trying to do anything social or whatever and you think you can focus on, let me just send this report really quick. No, you're going to make a mistake. It's not worth it. Just
Yep.
find the time to do it and then do it right and get it over with, because you
Yeah.
spend like twice the amount of time trying to get it done than if you had just scheduled time to do it and you get it done in 5 minutes or whatever it is.
Exactly. I talk about this in my workshops all the time
Yeah.
because humans think, and everybody thinks that they're special, right? Like everybody
Mhm.
is special, but but they have that some unique ability that other humans don't have and
Yeah.
that they can multitask.
Oh yeah.
At, however, our brains are not designed to multitask. They are not, it's not a possibility, it's not a capability that humans have.
Yeah.
Not even you, whoever's listening.
No. Yeah. Right. And I used to think that I could multitask because I'd be like
Mhm.
answering an email in a meeting or like on the
Yeah.
phone, like a webinar, and then do, but it's like you're not really paying attention.
No.
And like for me, now that's like stimulation overload. Like I
Yeah.
can't even like my body starts to like reject. Like I can't even
Mhm.
focus on anything that's happening because there's too much happening. So it's like just
Right.
focus on one thing, do it right, plan the time for it, and you'll get it done in like half the amount of time, if not shorter.
Yeah.
And that's it. And you get it
Exactly. I love that you have recognized this because
done. Me
it
too.
changes everything in your life. Like you just you you're more efficient.
Yeah.
You're more focused when you are on whatever you're focused on, whether it's your kids or your work or
Mm-hmm.
anything. You're more
Mm-hmm.
focused, you're more there. And I love that you also pointed out that it ends up taking you less time.
Oh yeah. And that's what I
Mhm.
want, you know? And that was another huge reason of, I mean, of course I always wanted something for myself to build something, to leave a legacy. And, you know, I know it's
Mhm.
aspirational, but to have time and to have balance. And so if I'm not intentionally creating that, then why am I doing this? Like if
Right.
I'm not creating a life that is like serving me and my goals, then why am I doing it? And that, to your point before about, you know, finding um, about boundaries, you know what your goals are and what kind of fits with what you're trying to build. And so when an opportunity comes your way or someone asks you for something and it doesn't really fit quite right, then it's like, well, not right now, even, you know,
Mhm.
maybe later, follow up with me in a month and we'll see where
Yeah.
we're at then. But it's like,
Right.
you can't focus on all these things because then nothing will get done. It's just too
Right.
much. It's
It
noise.
comes back to knowing what your values and priorities are
Mm-hmm.
and then being able to make decisions based on that. And
Yeah.
if it doesn't fit, then to say no. Like
Yeah.
more people need to learn to say no more than they need to learn to say yes, right?
Yeah.
Like
I think so.
it's not about adding more stuff into your life. I don't think
Yeah.
anybody in who's listening or who's not listening, who should be listening, but nobody needs to add more stuff to their life. People need to subtract stuff so that they could enjoy the stuff that's still there more.
Yeah. And also like because you're saying something so important too. So just to further emphasize that, like take a minute to appreciate everything that you do have. Like
Mm,
your life is so full right now.
yeah.
And I said this to someone previously, like if you're working towards something, amazing, but be happy and appreciate that you're working towards something. But don't be upset that you don't have it yet or it hasn't happened
Hmm.
yet or like whatever it is. You know what I mean? Be
Right.
happy and grateful and content. Look around at everything you have and it's beautiful, you
Yeah.
know? And if
Yeah.
you're not happy with it, then be happy that you're working to make it better, you know?
Yes. Oh, yes. That's so good.
I
That
love
is
that
such
you're
a good
applauding
point.
me. Thank you.
Yes, I am. I am.
Yes. No, but it's true. Like you have to practice gratitude and appreciate the things around you because that is what is going to keep you moving forward. And that is what will attract more amazing things to happen to you because it attracts positive energy, you know? And
Yeah.
then when you have great opportunities coming to you with great people like yourself, I mean, we met on LinkedIn because
Right.
someone had a conversation with me and they were intrigued by me and then they wanted me to talk to you. So it's a positive interaction that I had with someone, thought that we could have a positive interaction, and then maybe our positive interaction will help other people and their pursuit of happiness. You know,
Yeah.
that's what it's all about.
Absolutely. And as I always say too, gratitude is the highest energetic vibration that we can achieve as humans. Energetically,
So
gratitude is the
important.
highest. And I just want to throw in here, and I don't want to like get all into it, but we're recording this podcast exactly 1 week after my father's funeral. And one of the last words I heard him say when the hospice workers were taking care of him was thank you. And it's just yeah, that's it is so important. Even like I don't even know like what words describe the feelings I have around um hearing him say that.
Mhm.
It was like pride, but how it wasn't pride. It was just like, oh my gosh, even at the last moments of his life, he's still saying thank you to people.
No, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah. And
beautiful.
now I'm tearing up.
I know. And now you're making me tear too. Lori, stop it.
Yeah. Okay.
No, but it's
So,
really,
so
really beautiful. And honestly, like what a lasting memory that even in a really sad moment in your life, like it's so beautiful. And what a beautiful memory and like a legacy. Like that's how you'll
yeah.
remember him. And isn't
Yeah.
that how we all want to be remembered? To look
Right.
back and be like, wow, they were so appreciative and so grateful and like so humble and kind. Like, isn't that how we all want to be remembered? You know?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. This has been such a good conversation.
Oh,
And
I agree.
we cannot leave it before I ask you what your hype song is. What's the song that you listen to when you
I
need the
know.
extra boost of energy?
I'm telling you, this is like the hardest way. Like I mentioned before, my dad's a musician. So like I grew up on Motown and blues and like all this stuff, but I'm going to go really different. And for some reason, my hype song that popped into my head was Post Malone, Wow.
Okay. All right.
My kids don't know it because it's not quite clean, but there's
Uh-huh.
just something about the music. I love Post Malone. I think he's
Yes.
really fun, and that's just one of those songs a little bit older. But whenever it happens to come on, it's like I'm always happy to hear it. It like gets
Yeah.
you.
And you can't sit still, right?
Yeah, it's like a little bit of a confidence booster. Like if you have a little bit of an ego, then it's like I feel like this is like a good song to hype you up a little bit. You know?
I love it. I'm going to put a link to that in the show notes. And I'm also going to put a link in the show notes to how people can reach you if they want to continue a
Yeah.
conversation with you. So tell me how that, where that is. Where do they reach you?
Oh, sure. Well, always connect with me on LinkedIn. I love meeting people. I think our relationship is a testament to that. We met on
Yep.
LinkedIn. But I love connecting with people, hearing their stories, just building my network, you know? So, and, you know, maybe there's a way where we can work together and help each other out, or maybe I can just help you and get you connected with someone in my network. So I appreciate the opportunity to give it back too. So connect with me on LinkedIn. Or on my website, sharpconsulting.com.
Okay.
Happy to connect.
Awesome. I'll have links to both of those things in the show notes as well. Michelle, thank you so much for
Thank you,
joining me
Lauren.
today on
Thank
Fine is
you.
the 4-letter word.
Thank you so much.